Hello and welcome everyone to episode number 63 at the Indie Football Podcast. Actually, it's 62. We just keep doing so many of these episodes that I get the number up and down sometimes, and it has been a while since we did a podcast, but we wanted to ensure that we return with a bang, and that's exactly what we have done by having Damon Carr here with us. Thank you, Damon, for taking out the time. It's just nice to have you here.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Absolute pleasure. I mean, I'm quite honoured to be even asked to come on this podcast. And when you said that you've been looking forward to this episode, I've been looking forward to it as well since you've told me. So thank you for inviting me on as well.
Yeah,
It's a
Anukarsh sir, I think our conversation revolving around Liverpool, Damon's journey on making it to the LFC transfer room is probably more than 50% reasons of why we started this podcast almost 2 years ago.
Absolutely. Liverpool fans are always welcome, no matter how much I try to maintain the neutrality of the podcast. But on a serious note, me and Damon, we have had a number of conversations during the summer transfer window, and as I've known him better, I have known that not only is he an ardent Liverpool fan, he's also a really kind person when it comes to responding to your tweets and interacting with the fans. And the way he deals with the trolls and all, I'll get more into it, is absolutely brilliant. So, yeah, Damon, welcome to the Indie Football Podcast. And we have been wanting to have you for quite some time now. Tell us a bit about your Liverpool FC fandom and your journey with LFC Transfer Room. Just give us a bit of an insight into it.
Growing up a Liverpool fan, it was through my father. My father spotted Liverpool throughout the 70s, 80s. And then since I was born, just straight in. I know I'm not from Liverpool. I'm up from North England, but I am from Yorkshire. I don't know if you know it, but I'm from Yorkshire.
Yeah.
But through my father, and then that's going to pass on to my children as well, I think. But I've been as passionate as anyone else, whether you're from Liverpool or not. I'm passionate as anyone else. I've grown up around Man United fans, around Arsenal fans. So the 90s and 2000s were very, very tough. Going around those, and I think it just solidified, my fandom for Liverpool, because I found a newfound hate for Man United fans, if I'm honest. And I think Liverpool, people that live in Liverpool, I think they're looking not to grow up around that, especially when they're winning Premier League after Premier League. But regarding the LFC transfer room thing, it was just it was a moment of luck, I think. But it was an opportunistic look, which I took. Unfortunately, I got COVID. I think it was 2021. I think I got COVID, so I was home isolating, and I saw a post by LC Transfer Room saying looking for writers. I messaged Matt and never looked back.
Yeah.
I mean, if I didn't have COVID, I wouldn't have seen that post. I believe in things happen for a reason, and here I am today, now hosting podcast, hosting spaces, hosting YouTube channel, as well as the writing on the side as well.
I think it was a blessing in disguise for you at that time to have that kind of a situation, and then an opportunity coming in, and that's something I think Anukarsh sir will agree that it's not the first time that we are talking about here in this podcast, because India certainly, the place where we have grown up in the country, certainly lacks a bit of that environment of football where you mentioned about growing up around United fans, Arsenal fans, and tell me a bit more about that particular phase of your life, when it was probably the first decade of this century and Liverpool were not as strong. I know that Anukarsh sir here was a fan of Liverpool because what Steven Gerrard did and how many other Liverpool fans rose up to the occasions, but they were not where United were at that time or Arsenal were at that time. So how did you go through those moments in your life?
It was surviving. I think it was surviving at that point. I think it was a very, very tough time being a Liverpool fan. Now, I was so loyal and so petty though when it comes to games, and I think it was the Champions League final, 2005 final. I was 16 at the time, so I had a GCSE exam the next day, and we won the Champions League final that night. I couldn't get to sleep. I was known as a Liverpool fan at high school, and I got mocked every single day being a Liverpool fan. But the next morning, I took my Liverpool flag into school. I was that petty, but I had to take my Liverpool flag in and say, look, I'm proud of these boys. I didn't think I'd win the Champions League. throughout throughout the 90s and 2000s because of the teams we had, and obviously it was only Gerard that could give us any sort of confidence into games. But yeah, it was tough going around Man United fans because obviously they were winning titles whilst we were winning nothing, and it was a struggle. But it solidified my loyalty to the club, I think, and having to put up with other fans that are going through success as well as your team not doing very well. I think it's a good testimony in terms of staying with that club.
Right. How much interesting point you talked about? You mentioned Gerard and all. So for me personally, the Gerard and Torres partnership had a big impact on how I grew up and how much friendships and combinations in sports work in tandem. So how much did that inspire you? And did you feel that partnership because of Torres's move to Chelsea always had an unrelinquished sort of an ending, or it did not really get the ending that partnership deserved, considering the trophies they could have won together.
I think it was the best partnership I've seen in the Premier League, especially at that time. We saw Drogba, Lampard, but in those 2 years, especially with Prime Torres, with the hair slicked back, blonde hair in a headband, I've never seen a pair play like that so easily and so telepathically. Gerard, obviously my favourite Liverpool player of all time. Growing up in the 90s, though, I accustomed to Matt Manaman quite early on. Then Michael Owen came along the scene. I think Michael Owen was my first person I got on the back of my shirt. But Gerard, again, it took over. And ever since then, I kept getting Gerard shirts every single year. The only player I've had on the back since is Mane. I think that's the only player I've had on the back of my shirt since Gerard. So the Gerard Torres, what a combination! What a duo those two were. Just everything, it clicked from the moment. I think he played against, was it Chelsea's second game of the season, something like that. Torres and scored a goal. Since then, I think I always go back to the Newcastle game where Torres dropped his shoulder and the keeper went on the floor. That was one of the best goals I've ever seen. Just such a simple thing to do, just a drop in the shoulder, and the keeper fell for it. And that telepathically there between those two, like you said, I wish it lasted longer. It came to an abrupt end. I don't think Torres should have dyed his hair brown though, if I'm honest. He should have kept it blonde, and that blonde Torres was one of the best strikers I've ever seen.
It almost, you mentioned about certain hairstyles of certain players. It almost reminds us of, Damon, do you follow any bit of cricket? Just for
bits. I follow bits. Not as low as you guys over there now.
No, I mean the reason I tell you is that Anukarsh sir will probably know this. One of our World Cup winning captains, Mahendra Singh Dhoni, was once complimented by Pakistan's president on his hairstyle, and how to come. So I think it was, and you also mentioned about hairstyles and certain things. What it also reminds me of, I was reading a book called Soccernomics. It's a great book on how certain football transfers happen and how the business behind sports, between clubs, between players, the role agents play. So they just mentioned around how blondes, when it comes to scouting, blonde footballers are generally the easiest to notice, because they just stand out from the rest, and they also kind
I
of
think Haaland also, for that matter, I guess, right?
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
why players bleach the blonde hair, like Neymar, for example. It don't work with Carlton though, because he's still bad.
Yeah. not that he needs any attention though, but I think Anukarsh sir, the reason why, when Damon mentioned Mane, I think it's a very nice segue into one question that I personally wanted to ask both of you, and I'm just looking forward to be the secondary viewer here in this podcast today, but because I have got two such wonderful Liverpool
I'll
supporters.
interrupt you
So
here once.
yeah,
Damon, just for your knowledge, my co-host here is a Real Madrid fan. So
yeah.
deep inside, he knows that his team is playing in the Champions League this season. I'm just giving you a bit of
Yeah,
an insight into that.
but I can't help to appreciate Liverpool as much as now, because I've had Anukarsh with me doing this for close to 2 years. But Damon, my question to you is, ever since Liverpool won the Premier League title not so many years ago, and now they have, I would say, like, even though with nothing against Liverpool or just a general football viewer, now they have slipped down to the Europa League. So why do you think that has happened? You mentioned Mane, you mentioned certain players leaving, or do you think something this, or do you can point out two reasons that this is why it happened, and then Anukar sir, you can also chip in.
I think it. I think my answer to the main answer to this. Obviously, it's Fenway Sports Group, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But I think standards as well in the fan base is quite low. I think over the last 90s, 2000s, I've told you about, like, I've suffered through going up around my United fans. Those standards down there are sort of embedded into fans' heads, where we sort of treat ourselves not like that big club that we are sometimes. So we're accepting, like, this bad backing from FSG. We're accepting mediocre players maybe on the pitch sometimes. We are one of the biggest clubs in the world. We're the most successful club in English football, but we tend to forget that as fans. And I can't imagine Bill Shankly sitting there with that backing from FSG and being accepting it. I think Klopp accepted it to a certain extent, but there's only so much he can say. When it comes to press conferences, he says quite sly things. I think he says like, not under his breath, but like, you've got to read between the lines when he talks in press conferences. Only recently he's been a bit more brutal with he's been quite straightforward in press conferences, and he's getting quite frustrated. But it's FSG, mate, if I'm honest. It really is FSG. I know people say they've done well for the club, and for me, I don't have a narrative against them. They've always had the chance to change my opinion on them. Always had the chance. I've given them chance after chance after chance, and they seem to just not bother changing my opinion, because they seem to not back the club. Even like this season, this summer, a major rebuild, and we're still left short again. And people say, well, Klopp's choosing that. Klopp doesn't choose not to get a DM, for example. Klopp wanted a DM. And I did a video the other day, actually, for LFC Transfer Room, about us missing out on a DM being a massive mistake, and probably the biggest mistake of the season. And the replies I got, this is what I'm saying regarding fans, some of the replies I got, the ones that I didn't agree, would say trust Klopp. But Klopp has tried to get Lavia, Klopp's tried to get Caicedo, Klopp is still trying to get Andre now. So they're contradicting themselves by saying that, if that makes sense. They're trying to say trust Klopp, but Klopp wants a DM. Yeah. So for me, if you're going to come to me with a counter argument, come with logic, as I've always said. But regarding where Liverpool are right now, again, it's standards, and I think it starts from the top. And no matter whether Klopp makes mistakes, and he does, Klopp makes many mistakes, the players make many mistakes, and I'll be first to call them out for those mistakes. But it always starts where the root cause, and that's FSG. If a leaf falls off a tree, it comes from the root of the tree. Eventually, it's the time of the year where the leaves fall off. But yeah, I just think I'm at the point now where I've gone past being angry with FSG. I just sort of let things play out now, and hopefully, I'm hoping Qatar is coming. And anyone really, I think anyone who's coming at this point to take over. I just want really the people at the club to care about what's happening on the pitch. And that's what I care about. And I don't think John Henry does. I really don't think he does. I think he cares more about making profit for himself. I mean, you see it every single season. He's been to Anfield like once a year, if that. And that's not really caring about the club. That's not caring about the city. And I don't live in a city, but I still know scousers in that city that can't stand that sort of ownership, because you see what Man City ownership's done. The Sheikhs have done it there. That, yes, they might be cheating in terms of oil money, but look what they've done to the city itself. And Man City fans are raving about that. They care about the club. You can tell they care about the club. And with John Henry, he comes over once a year, and this time it wasn't even for a Caicedo deal. This time it's a snitch on Chelsea. Yeah, it tells you everything you need to know about John Henry and his priorities, I think.
Yeah, Anuka sir, I'm sure you have something to add to that.
Yeah, definitely. Like this is the part of the show which I really, was looking forward to the most because I totally resonate with Damon here. What happens on Twitter, and this has been for happening for a long time, is that like I've seen this with Damon. Suppose if he puts out a tweet saying that it's time for FSG to go or something like that, there is a certain group of people on Twitter. They are called the top reds. I'm sure Damon might know about them, and they have two logics. One of them is that at least around in 2010, Liverpool were close to getting into administration. So FSG saved us. I agree, and I appreciate that at that time they did. But the fact is, a club cannot run like that. If the fact is that Manchester City here is making a legacy here by winning trophies over and over again, making it almost a farmers' league. And the reason I'm saying the fact is because I'm talking about what Rafa Benitez said with his facts jibe a few seasons back, and it is what it is. Because where we stand at this point of time, uh, like the investment needs to come in if we want to compete and let's talk about Mohamed Salah. If Mohamed Salah had gone, did we have the funds to replace him even if we had got that sort of money? Could we go out there and buy at least one or two world class players who could, if not replace him, do something about the goal tally we would be losing? Because the fact is that ideally, a Salah, if not a Salah replacement, someone who could compete with Ben Doak for the right wing role as a secondary to Mohamed Salah should have come. Someone like Bakayoko, I am sure you might have heard the name, Damon, from PSV. He's a winger, if I'm getting the name right. And
Yeah,
like
yeah.
players like, yeah, exactly. And players like Andre, players like Caicedo. I mean, at the end of the day, it's good that they did make a bid, but I won't be surprised if it was a PR gimmick for that matter. Because if you want a player, you don't just tell him 2 days back, oh, we want you. There's a proper groundwork that needs to be in place. When we got